The Philadelphia 76ers are direct threats to win the entire Eastern Conference, and they have not been given the necessary respect that they deserve. I'm here to break down in this video why this team is completely different with Joel Embiid back in fold, the impact that he does make, and why the outlook for this team should be specifically based on the moments in which he is on the floor. The Sixers are not what their record indicates. We know that they do have to scrap their way out of the 7th seed, that they will face the Miami Heat in the opening round with a 47-35 overall record, but that is not an indicator of how good this team truly is. All I care about is what they look like when their best player is on the floor, and that is what I expect to see during this playoff run. That even with him maybe not at his peak 1,000% version of himself, Joel Embiid at 80% is better than a significant amount of the NBA. It's a very short list of players that you can make that argument. And to look at how good these Sixers truly are with him, you don't have to go far. That 31-8 on the season when Joel Embiid is in the lineup, I get it, 16-27 without him, but that's partially an indictment on this team without him, and every team is going to be worse without their superstar. Just look at the Memphis Grizzlies this year and how far things fell downhill once Ja Morant was ruled out, how he had his injury, and everything that spiraled from there. To this Sixers credit, they were able to stay afloat enough to have a successful playoff run when this guy stepped back on the floor. And now that he is here, I'm ready to watch it unfold. And to dive into the specifics of just how impactful he is, shout out to Austin Krell here. Once again, these Sixers were 31-8 with Joel Embiid on the floor and outscored opponents by 9 points per 100 possessions when Joel Embiid played. This 65 win pace would have been the best record in the NBA and the second best net rating overall this season. That is impressive stuff and real deal stuff that we have seen the Sixers team during the Joel Embiid era finish first place in the East. We've seen them be among the league leaders in record just about every year, just right in that hunt. It would have been no different this year if that is how things played out. But of course, we know that the injury factor did happen. And of course, we're not 100% sure what version of Joel Embiid we are going to see during this playoffs. But if we get the best version of him, the league better watch out. And you can see the direct impact and correlation on how things fall apart when he's not here. To take a look at the net rating of this team on a month-by-month basis, it's pretty noticeable when Joel Embiid's there and when he is not. So shout out to NBA University for this tweet. For starters, the Sixers still managing to produce the 8th best net rating in the NBA, even throughout, including the time that he did miss. But to dive into the specifics here, starting off in October with a plus 11.4 net rating. Then looking at November, plus 7.1. December, plus 13.1. And then in January, we start to see where the loss of Joel Embiid impacts his team. Minus 2.2 overall, minus 8.5 in February, minus 1.7 in March, and then with him making his return in April, plus 12.1 for this Sixers team. That is impressive stuff, just the impact that he makes. And it is no secret why. I mean, the guy has quite literally been crowned the most valuable player in the NBA and been in the mix for those talks on just about the past 4 or 5 years. And in fact, if there was no injury to Joel Embiid this year, he would have been running away with this award once again. There is a larger gap between Embiid and Jokic this season than there ever had been before. And even last year was an opportunity when he did get crowned that it was something where it came down to the wire. There were no ifs, ands, and buts that Joel Embiid was the best player in the NBA, and even with the time that he missed. That, like, during the stretch that he played on the floor, it's impressive that he was crowned MVP last year and took his game to new levels in a variety of ways. And a couple specifically that I did want to hit on, I'll start off by pulling up his stats here. Overall, averaging 34.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, a career-high 5.6 assists per game, 1.2 steals, 1.7 blocks per game. Very efficient as well, shooting 52.9% from the field, which is a really good number there. Also 38.8% from three. He's also put an increase in his three-point attempts since coming back from the injury, which I think is going to be a notable storyline to watch throughout this playoff run. But it is that playmaking that is the biggest step forward to me. When you think about this Sixers teams, their playoff shortcomings, and Joel Embiid's specific playoff shortcomings, number one, of course, is the injury factor, and that's a separate conversation from this. But as far as his actual play deteriorating in the playoffs, I think he gets a harsher rep than he deserves, that he goes from an MVP top 3 player in the league to just kind of an all-star level player, which is still a pretty high bar that he has to live up to when you have that discussion. But a lot of the driving force from that is he hasn't been good enough as a passer in past years. Well, this year, he absolutely looks like that is going to be the case. And one of the driving forces and reasons that has presented itself is Nick Nurse, that there is more movement in this offense. There are passes for Joel Embiid to make. There's cutters playing off. There's opportunities for him to maximize his teammates, and he also has teammates that can be maximized in a way that was not the case in past year. There is no PJ Tucker on this roster. There is no Ben Simmons on this roster. There is no guy that is afraid to take that big time shot. And then when you think about Joel Embiid in the past, he would center into kind of that ISO ball hero mode where he tried to take on the world. I think he has a willingness to trust his teammates this year, and I think he has the teammates that are going to step up. And to look at that depth chart and how things will shake out in its entirety, as we know, the playoff rotations will shorten. That we are not going to see the 12 to 15 men that we've kind of rotated throughout the length of the season. I think it's going to look something similar to this. That we know that Tyrese Maxey and Kyle Lowry likely hold down the fort as the starting guards. Unfortunate that D'Anthony Melton does not appear ready, and that is going to be a hit to the rotation there. But Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and then those bottom three in that second unit, I do think will be the regular rotation. That Buddy Hield, because of his shooting, Nico Batum, I think likely will get the start. I think it's more likely that Oubre comes off the bench, and then B-Ball Paul holding things down as the backup center, who's played some really good minutes for this team lately. That is a really good, just 8-man rotation there, and there's still some X factors that could come in and swing a game. It would not surprise me if we get one game where Ricky Council absolutely changes the momentum, or KJ Martin, where his athleticism is needed. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if during this Heat matchup that KJ Martin's a guy that they lean on because of the way that the Heat play, the athleticism, all these different factors. So there are a couple swing factors, and those type of energy guys can absolutely flip a playoff game. But the core of this team in its whole, I think, is as deep and as productive as you can argue in past years. That Kelly Oubre, who's a guy who, again, I think likely is to come off the bench for this playoff run, although it's very difficult to take him out of the starting lineup based on how he's been playing lately. I can't find a player that can compare us to him in Sixers history during the Joel Embiid era. That the athleticism he brings, the willingness to step into center stage, his kind of feel for the game, I've been a little surprised by, and I know he's still good for the not great decision as far as a heat check or some of the opportunities like that, but he just has a niche for finding his way on backdoor cuts, for creating putback dunks. There's little things that he does that I did not expect, and he also competes defensively far more than I think was the case. So when you think about that being the core of this Sixers team, when you think about Nick Nurse, a proven champion coach, a guy that won a championship in his first year as the head coach of the Raptors, might have an opportunity to do the same thing with this Sixers team. And when you think about Joel Embiid, seemingly willing to mature and have his trust in his teammates in a different way this year, the world is up for grabs in the Sixers world. And the last point of emphasis, the other reason that I think people are underselling how good this Sixers team could be, is who can beat them in the Eastern Conference. That the East has gotten significantly weaker. And I know Boston is going to be, that gold standard that everyone is held to, that they do have an advantage when you think about how good they've been this year, that there is a gap in the standings, a significant one at that. But when you look beyond that, who else is scary? The Miami Heat, this Sixers team just should straight up be. And I will have another video kind of breaking down the matchup, why I'm not afraid of this Heat team. It does break my basketball brain as every single analytic, everything that I dive into points to this Sixers team just being straight up better. But there's always that lingering thought of playoff Jimmy, whatever. But if they beat this Heat team, that momentum boost is more valuable, I would say, than having the week off. That if you are able to defeat this Heat team, one that has knocked you out of the playoffs before, one that has Jimmy Butler, a guy that has ripped this Sixers fans' hearts out in a variety of ways, that is a huge momentum boost. And you carry that right into this Knicks series, and the Knicks are a good team. They're gritty, they're tough. I respect the Knicks far more than a lot of these teams, but they still lack some top-end talent. And Jalen Brunson's terrific, but who's his number two? And my argument, my optimism for this Sixers team is the gap between Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Maxey is significantly smaller than the gap between Tyrese Maxey and the Knicks number two. I don't think that's even close to debate. If you want to throw Dante DiVincenzo in there, if you want to throw OG Anunoby, obviously they're without Julius Randle. I think that there's a large gap that is going to be tough to be made up there. And looking out elsewhere in the Eastern Conference, who should the Sixers be afraid of? The Indiana Pacers? Really? The Orlando Magic? That young team? The Cavs, who have been frauds, and the Sixers have beat them without both Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey this year? The Milwaukee Bucks with Doc Rivers? I'm praying for that to be the second round matchup, that I would love nothing more than this team to get past this second round barrier by ripping out the heart of Doc Rivers right in front of his face. But to be honest, I don't even know if he gets it there, if he makes it to that point. And I'm honestly really disappointed by the news with the Giannis injury, them potentially being without him, because this is just another excuse handed right in Doc Rivers' platter right in front of him. That team might not make it out of the first round with or without Giannis, and it is unfortunate that he does kind of have this out. And by the way, travel staff, equipment managers, I would watch out at that press conference following the game, because Doc Rivers is going to come swinging. He might not have his best game plan of attack for the on-court action, but he certainly will for destroying and giving out blame following the game. And then looking beyond that, the Boston Celtics is really the only other team we have to discuss here. That is a far way away. The Celtics, they've looked phenomenal this year, but they've also been a team that has slipped up in the biggest moments. And my basketball kind of mindset, what makes me struggle from getting fully on board the Celtics team, when you look at their shot diet as a team, they're just so dependent on hitting tough shots. That is the Jason Tatum end of shot clock step backs. It is these 3-point barrage that they're launching on a nightly basis. And while it is clearly proven effective for them, it just takes a couple of poor shooting performances, and all of a sudden, you're packing your bags. So obviously, the Sixers have a long way to go, but they should not be afraid of a single team in this Eastern Conference. If they play to their best ability, if they play up to their standard of best basketball, there's not a team that can run with them. And we will see if that is ultimately going to be the case, but everything within the Sixers' walls should be focused internally. That it's all about what they put on the floor. They are good enough when they play their best. Joel Embiid is talented enough to lead this team on a tear. Tyrese Maxey is prepared to be a number 2 option. They have the pieces around him. They have the championship coach. Now it's time to lace him up, check rock, and go win some basketball games. I do think the Sixers team has a chance this year. I want to know if you guys agree with me in the comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like, and dropping your comments and your thoughts from here. I'm ready for a deep playoff run, and I hope all of you are as well.